It isn't going to be easy. These things never are. But we do believe that we have the best chance that we have had for many generations to secure peace. And I wanted to emphasize yet again to you our total and complete determination and commitment to find a peaceful way through. With goodwill and with proper cooperation and with some trust on all sides, I think it is possible. And I thank the President for his condemnation of those sectarian killings that have so disfigured the process over the past few weeks. And I say yet again, what we must ensure is that those random, brutal, unjustified acts of violence perpetrated by a small minority must not, in the end, frustrate the wishes of the overwhelming majority of people in Northern Ireland to secure a peaceful and stable future for themselves. We discussed, of course, the Middle East peace process and Bosnia and our commitment there. We discussed, as the President has mentioned a moment ago, the global economy, the Asian crisis, and what measures we should take in order to ensure that such crises are mitigated and do not happen again. We also laid out for the President and his colleagues our strategy as President of the European Union, our commitment to ensure that monetary union is successfully launched, our commitment to the enlargement process, bringing into the European Union those countries in Eastern Europe and elsewhere. And we discussed as well and agreed that it was important that Europe strengthened its relationship with Turkey and that we built a strong relationship with Turkey, between Turkey and the European Union, for the future. As good and interesting as anything else has been also the possibility of exchanging ideas, ideas about how government meets the economic and social and political challenges of the future. As I said in my speech this morning at the breakfast hosted by the Vice President, there is a new Britain being shaped today. It is a Britain of confidence, dynamism. It is a Britain that is proud of its past, but is not living in it, and is shaping a future of which we can be proud also. And I think in exchanging ideas and in seeing how much there are common themes and common ideas for government between us, we can gain strength in Britain and the United States from that partnership and relationship. And finally, I would like to say, personally, how tremendously grateful I've been, as I say, not merely for the warmth of the welcome extended to us here, but for the great comradeship and partnership between the United States of America and Great Britain that I know will strengthen and strengthen ever more in the future. Thank you.
Well, let me first of all say, once again, I never ask anybody to do anything but tell the truth. I know about the stories today. I was pleased that Ms. Curry's lawyers stated unambiguously this morning, unambiguously, that she's not aware of any unethical conduct. But this investigation is going on, and you know what the rules for it are. And I just think as long as it's going on, I should not comment on the specific questions. Because there's one, then there's another, then there's another. It's better to let the investigation go on and have me do my job and focus on my public responsibilities and let this thing play out its course. That's what I think I should do, and that's what I intend to do.
In the dark.
Well, I'm honoring the rules of the investigation. If someone else is leaking unlawfully out of a grand jury proceeding, that's a different story. I have told the American people what I think is essential for them to know about this, and what I believe they want to know. What I'm doing is going on with my work and cooperating with the investigation. And I do not believe I should answer specific questions. I don't think that's the right thing to do now.
Michael.
Michael Branson of IGN in London. Is it not time, though, to drop the pretense that this is simply business?
I hope we do that, but what I would say to you is that what is essential is that we focus on the issues that we were elected to focus upon. And in the discussions that we have had over this past 2 days, we've been focusing on issues like Iraq, where we are considering if diplomatic solutions fail, taking military action. We've been focusing on the peace process in Northern Ireland that gives the chance, for the first time in generations, after centuries of conflict, for people to find a way through. We've been focusing on the problems of the world economy, that if they're not tackled, could have a serious impact on the living standards of people here and people in Britain, as well as people out in Asia. These are the important questions For me, schools, hospitals, crime, living standards, jobs that people want us to focus upon. And I believe that it is absolutely essential that we stay focused upon those things and that we deliver for our people what we were elected to deliver. Now, that is what I intend to do. And I think that that is, in the end, what the British people would expect me to do.
Terry.
Mr. President, switching to Iraq, the Prime Minister said that there was a...
Well, you asked about 5 questions there in one. Let me try to unpack it. First of all, the most important thing, the best thing that could be done, what we hope will happen, is that there will be a diplomatic solution to this, which will result in the inspection teams for the United Nations being able to return and have unfettered access to the appropriate sites. Because as the Prime Minister, I think, put out a paper just a couple of days ago pointing out the incredible work that's been done by the inspection teams. That's the best thing. Now, whether there is a diplomatic solution or not is entirely up to Saddam Hussein. If he decides that he wants to continue to have the freedom to rebuild his weapons program, then I believe that the clear mandate for the world community, based on not only the resolutions of the United Nations, but the danger this would present to the interests and values of the United States, to the people of Great Britain, to the people of the region, is to do what we can to weaken his ability to develop those weapons of mass destruction and to visit them on his neighbors. You know, I never discuss operational plans. I wouldn't do that. I think the important thing is that you know that I don't want this. Nobody wants this. We want a diplomatic solution. It's up to him. The second thing I would say is the Secretary of State has been working very hard in the last several days, has traveled, as you know, widely. I have been on the phone a lot. I believe there is more agreement than at first it appears about the necessity to push this thing through to the end. And I will continue to talk with President Yeltsin, President Chirac, and others. But consider the alternative. After all, this man is the only repeat offender around with chemical weapons. He used them on his own people. He used them on the Iranians. And I believe it's a very serious thing. And I think that the American people will understand that.
World War is
Understand what chain of circumstances would lead to that development. I don't believe that will happen.
Peter.
Peter at all the Times. On Iraq, you said the need to...
That we have made is the deployment that I have described of the aircraft. And in respect of the objectives, well, the objective is very clear. That is to ensure either that the weapon inspectors can come in and finish their task, or that the capability that Saddam Hussein undoubtedly has and wants to develop for weapons of mass destruction is taken out. And it is absolutely essential that what we do is focus upon the best way possible that we can do that. Now, obviously, as the President was saying a moment or two ago, it is not sensible or serious to start discussing the details of the military options available to us. But the purpose of this, the whole way through, the reason we are in this situation is because he has been developing weapons of mass destruction. The only barrier to that has been the inspectors. If the inspectors are prevented from doing their work, then we have to make sure, by the military means of which we are capable, that insofar as possible, that capacity ceases. And that's the objective. And it's an objective that I think is fully in line, as I say, with the original agreements under which Saddam Hussein undertook. I mean, remember, he agreed, he undertook to destroy any weapons of mass destruction capability, whether nuclear, chemical, or biological. Now, he's in breach of that. We've got to make sure that he complies one way or another with it.
Mr. President, just to go back to the controversy that's been surrounding, do you now...
Let me just say this. Again, even though the judge's order has been routinely violated by the other side in the case, the judge has issued strict orders in the case that covers everybody, including me, not to discuss it. I can tell you this, and I'm confident as this thing plays out, it will become more apparent in the future. If you go back, I told the truth in my deposition with regard to that issue, And I also did in 1992 when I did the interview, which I think was rerun the other night, the interview that Hillary and I did on 60 Minutes. And you just have to know that, and that I think it will become apparent as this case plays itself out that I did in fact do that. But I am not going to discuss that. The judge has given us strict orders not to discuss anything related to that case. The other side has violated it on a regular basis. I don't intend to do that. I'm just not going to do it.
Distinguish very carefully between what, of course, I accept varying degrees of enthusiasm or commitment for the military option, with the complete unanimity there is in the world community that Saddam Hussein has to comply with the resolutions and that his capacity to develop weapons of mass destruction must be halted. Now, it is difficult for us to see, and for me to see, quite frankly, that if you take that as the position, how diplomacy, unless it is backed up at least by the threat of force, is ever going to work and succeed. But it would be wrong, I think, to think that either for example, our French or our Russian colleagues were not absolutely insistent that Saddam Hussein comply with these resolutions, and they are making diplomatic efforts in order to ensure that that happens. I wish those efforts well, provided they're fully consistent with the principles that have been set out. It is just that we take the view, and I think experience teaches us that this is the only realistic view of Saddam Hussein, that unless you back up whatever diplomatic initiatives you're taking with saying quite clearly, well, if diplomacy doesn't work, the option of force is there, then those diplomatic initiatives are unlikely to succeed. But it's important that we realize that it is in that area that any difference lies, not in the insistence of the world community that he must come into line with those UN resolutions.
Peter, I think you should talk to them. I don't want to comment on what they're going to do. They're fully capable of speaking for themselves and for me in this case.
And your comments, sir, on the effect of the leaks?
I don't have anything to add to what has already been said about that.
Well, because I believed it, and because I think it is the right thing to do. And I've worked with President Clinton now for some 9 months as British Prime Minister. I have found him throughout someone I could trust, someone I could rely upon, someone I am proud to call, not just a colleague, but a friend. And in the end, you either decide in politics, when you're asked about people, you're going to say how you actually feel, or you're going to make a whole series of calculations. And my belief is that the right thing to say is what you feel. And I happen to think, if it's, I don't know whether this is my place to say it or not, that if you look at the American economy, you look at the respect with which America is held right around the world today, if you look at the standing and authority of the president, it's a pretty impressive record for anyone.
You asked, do I appreciate it? No, he should have come here and jumped all over me. I mean, it's,
do you want me to come back in now?
Of course I do. But, you know, I think it's also a testament about, there's been a lot of people bandy about the word character, and sometimes in loose and uncertain contexts. I think people who stand up and say things that they believe when it would be just as easy to walk away show a certain kind of character that I think is essential in a public leader. And I'm very gratified that Toни Blер has done that, not only for personal reasons, but because I think it will strengthen his authority as a world leader. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President, all these questions about your personal